Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. We should be good and live. Yes. Yes, we should be good and live. So, ironically, even though I am, technically at this point, thanks to COVID-19, the Civ, whatever we're calling it, I'm basically a full-time YouTuber at this point because of it. But I do still have like maybe half a dozen clients left right now that are going through and doing the virtual calls, and they ran a little late today, and so that's what happened with that. And so that's why I'm a little late today. So I'm still trying to get up my all my stuff so I can see everything that's talking, or everyone that's talking to me, and all of that. All right, so I've got that up. Okay. And we will do maybe two separate windows here, whatever. We'll figure it out. All right. So, hello, everyone. I know that this is not our usual night. We're here on a Wednesday. Uh, so let's see who is here today on this very unusual evening. Ben Sand is the first one in that I see today. Bob Greenwald, Rose Blight, Aaron Dennis, John Sparks, Fine Ape, 1393, Squid Monkey is here. Tim Allen is here. Dana Lay, Mac Roberts. No, I was late. You are not in YouTube jail. Q is here, of course. David Dole, Matthew Clark, Chubbs McFatflaps, Mr. Clubfoot 90. Some of your names, you guys, are really funny. Robert Chappelle, Twilight Mists is here, and Andy is here. Hello. Yeah, so I'm seeing that there were some issues with like the times and weird stuff like that. I don't know why it's telling you guys that this isn't for another 20 minutes. That's kind of weird. I did set it to start at 7:15 because, like I said, I knew that I still had a couple of clients left today, so I wanted to give them time to wrap that up and then come here because this setup that I use for my live stream is the exact setup that I use for my clients, but I'm doing that at home because I am not driving all the way here for a rando client here and there. But the internet at home is crappy, so I have to come here to get the Ethernet going. Anyway, so the whole point of today's live stream was because there is one component of this whole coronavirus lockdown, and if they demonetize me for saying that, then I'm gonna have some words with the YouTubes because this is clearly about mental health, which is a very important topic. But one of the things that isn't getting talked about in all of this is mental health and how people can try and cope with everything going on and maintain their sanity while being delegated to just their house in varying levels of severity and with varying levels of legal repercussions. And in fact, the people are talking about the death toll, right? But they're talking about the death toll specifically from COVID-19, and they are talking about the economic toll. No one is really talking about the mental health toll. And oddly enough, so there was a article that popped up just today on my Feedly. Let me get in here. From Tennessee. I saved a lot of articles today, so we're gonna have to scroll a little bit to find it. But basically, already suicides are skyrocketing, crisis calls are skyrocketing, relapses with alcoholism and various substances are skyrocketing. And it's no wonder, right? Because no one's talking about what happens when people who are already struggling are separated from their community. And that's what's happening. Here we go. More people died of suicide last week in Tennessee than COVID-19. Let me pull up the original article here and so you guys can share it. Or I can show you rather. So let's do share screen. Allow. So this particular article is from Zero Hedge, reprinted from a different website, but I actually really like Zero Hedge. I think that they're a really good website, and they always cite their sources. And so here we go. More people died of suicide last week in Tennessee than COVID-19. And the original source of this is a video that is not Tiger King, but that was put out by the Knox County Mayor Glenn Jacobs. And an excerpt from this video says, last year, our medical examiner performed autopsies for 199 confirmed or suspected suicides from across the region, with 83 of those coming from Knox County. Over the past 48 hours, that office has now examined 9 suspected suicides, 8 of which are from Knox County alone. For Knox County, that's almost 10% of last year's total number in the past 2 days alone. So that's pretty significant. And, you know, when people think of mental health issues, a lot of times people think, okay, well, it's the holidays, right? It's related to the holidays or pre-existing depression, or maybe there's a trauma, something like that. And yes, I mean, all of those things are risk factors and red flags and things that you would document in one of my videos. I talked about the LRAMP. It's the Linehan Risk Assessment and Management Protocol. It's one of the mechanisms we use, mental health therapists use, to assess risk, right? And those are all things that you would put in there and you document in there. But really, the number one factor that most people don't expect that is found in cases of suicide is actually economic hardship. The hardest hit age group and race, ethnicity, all of that for suicides, the biggest population actually is middle-aged white men who have just undergone some sort of economic hardship, whether it's a foreclosure, a layoff, quitting their job, whatever. That's actually the group that's at highest risk for suicide. And we are in a time where there are a lot of layoffs and a lot of unemployment. The feds are predicting unemployment rates of 32%. The Great Depression at its peak was about 24 to 25%. So we are talking about really significant numbers. I mean, in the first 2 or 3 weeks alone, there were 10 million unemployment claims. And now some of those are people who do have a job promised to them at the end of this, though that could always change depending on how long this gets drawn out. Those are also people that are still working, but maybe part-time and are, collecting on the hours that they would normally be making that they're missing. Either way, this is a pretty big deal. So before we go any further, I just want to remind people of a couple things. If anyone says like, oh, well, how do you have the authority to talk about any of this? Well, so I am a licensed therapist in the state of Massachusetts. I am an LMHC, that stands for Licensed Mental Health Counselor. I had to go to school for a total of 6 years to get a master's degree in this. And then I had to do 2 years of clinical practice, essentially. Actually, while I was in school, I had to do it in a practicum, and then I had to do a full year-long internship. Then I graduated, and then I had to do another 2 years of clinical practice before I could get licensed. There are a lot of hoops to jump through for mental health counselors, licensed professional counselors, whatever your acronym is in whatever state. And of course, I have to give the legal disclaimer that this video does not substitute for counseling. This video is not counseling. I'm not offering counseling in this video because that would be super illegal. But what I do want to do is, try to answer some general questions that people might have that might go more along like coaching lines, we'll say, offer some tips and tricks, some things that I have been suggesting to clients, things that have been working for them, things like that. So I see that I had a super chat. Let me get this. Michael Roach says mental health is always the last thing on the government mind. Well, I don't know if I would say that. Because there is that classic experiment, the Stanley Milligram experiment. Whoops, I'm hitting my desk. From, I believe it was the 1930s. So for those of you that are not familiar with the Stanley Milligram experiment, it is very pertinent right now, actually. So the Stanley Milligram experiment, basically what it was is this guy, Stanley Milligram, wanted to see the lengths that people would go through to obey authority, basically. And so what he did is he had his participants in one room in front of like an array of buttons, right? And then he told people that in the next room there was someone that was hooked up to an electric shock, and that every time you pushed the button it would give that person a shock. And he would ask, so that the person in the next room getting the shock was a plant. They were not actually there. But what happened was a lab person would come in and talk about their authority, right? And then try to get the participant to press the button to shock the person in the other room. And 9 times out of 10, the participant would hit the button. And so they would hit the button and the person in the next room would start screaming and things like that to fake pain and torture and all of this. And even when the participants were told, oh, that person that you're shocking has a heart condition, if the lab-coated doctor told them to press the button, they would still press the button. Those are the basics. And I think that is something very conscious in government's mind, that experiment. We also have the Stanford prison experiment, another classic experiment. That one was, I believe, in the 70s. There's a video or a movie about it up on Netflix right now, which is pretty decent. You can also find the original videos of the experiment by Dr. What was his name? Zimbago? I believe his name was Zimbago, something like that, up on YouTube, these old black and white videos. And what that was they took a bunch of volunteer college students and turned the bottom of Stanford, the basement of Stanford University, into a fake prison. And they randomly assigned their students to be either guards or people in jail. And the experiment had to be cut short quickly because the results were insane. They found that people very, very quickly adopted the roles that they were assigned to. So the people who had been assigned to be prisoners legitimately started acting like prisoners and doing hunger strikes and like barricading their fake cells with their mattresses and all of this. And the people who were assigned to be guards really stepped into that role of authority and abused their power. And it was just, it was bad. It was so bad that they had to stop it early to prevent people from getting hurt. And because at that point, it got bad enough that it became unethical really quickly. And that's why they had to cancel it. So I think that those two experiments specifically, I think that the government does think about those. And of course there was, MK Ultra and all of those things. So I think the government picks and chooses when it comes to mental health. And then feel free, you guys can try and, send me any like particular questions you have, and I will try to answer them in the best that I can within the legal scope of my license. Someone is saying if you don't push the button, oppositional defiance disorder. Not necessarily. They were actually, the experimenters were really unhappy with the amount of people they found that blindly obeyed authority, but times were very different then. Mike Bigelow says, so having lost my wife to breast cancer, I'm very sorry to hear that, and having my income cut by 1/3, so should I be worried? Well, I mean, so that depends. So what really, there are a couple things that set people apart as far as how they deal with situations and come out of them, really. And it comes down to resilience. Now, psychologists have tried to study resilience up and down, left, right, whatever, and they haven't really been able to find what exactly it is that creates resilience. Now, they've studied this in looking at one of the methods that they did was they provide something called the Adverse Childhood Experiences Scale, and they'll give this to people, and you have to, it's a list of, I forget how many, it's a lot, it's like 100 items or something that fall into the category of adverse childhood experiences. And basically, the more you check off, the higher chance you have of experiencing mental health issues, PTSD, complex trauma, any of these things. And what they have found, some of the people that separated out as not really having as many symptoms as opposed to the ones that did, was number one, having a really good support system, specifically having someone in childhood who could provide that one warm, stable, unconditional, positive regard relationship. It basically means unconditional love, someone who will be there for you and support you, like, no matter what. So that's a key thing that they've learned about resilience. Now, for things that are happening later in life that don't really have anything to do with childhood adverse experiences, the jury is still out. But they have found that if anyone is experiencing any sort of adversity or terrible experience, one thing that gives them a better prognosis is having a good support system. So in times where we're isolated, that makes having a strong support system a lot different. As I mentioned already earlier, that people are being separated from their support systems and their communities right now. And so we are seeing a spike in mental health issues and in suicides. And unfortunately, that's going to continue as long as this isolation period goes on. So should you be worried? Are you keeping up with your support system? Are you still reaching out to friends, loved ones, texting them, sharing memes, whatever, trying to get them on video calls, things like that? That's something that I'm suggesting anyone do in this time. Another thing that I have personally noticed sets some people apart from others in being able to handle tough times is having outside hobbies and interests. There are some people that I come across that come into my office and they have absolutely zero hobbies or interests. People in that situation can be really difficult to treat because they don't have any coping skills, because they don't like anything, really. And if there is some behavior that they're trying to change or something they're trying to get their mind off of, there is nothing to replace it with because they don't like anything. So one of the things I always try to do is encourage people to try to find some kind of hobby or interest. Reading, writing, disc golf, going shooting is probably a good one for a lot of you guys. A lot of you guys probably do it. Hunting, going to the gym, photography, whatever thing that you find you enjoy, are passionate about, playing music, whatever. We need to have some of these outside interests because A, it keeps us sane, and B, it helps us connect to other people. Another thing that I see a lot of times is people that are having troubles in their relationships, and they're like, oh, why do I suddenly feel like I don't love my wife anymore? And it's like, well, what do you guys do together? What do you have in common? Nothing. Well, okay. If you don't have anything in common with the person you've chosen to live with and spend your life with, you're probably not going to have a good time. So yes, outside hobbies and interests, and then trying to find ways to still do those in this time. And that has been a struggle for some people locally and within my own community, right? The disc golf community. As Q pointed out, the Army The actual army came and shut down the last of the disc golf courses in Massachusetts yesterday. The damn army, because that's not excessive at all. And so there were and that is because the government here has slowly and systematically been shutting down all of the public recreation areas and all the parks and all the fields and some of that. So some of these places had taken the baskets out and things like that, but people need to be outside. Number one, they need to be getting exercise. Exercise is healthy. In Massachusetts, it is a stay-at-home advisory. There is no rule about not leaving your house. You guys have heard me rant about this a couple of times already. Exercise, sunlight are imperative to staying both physically and mentally healthy. And they're so people were going out and still disc golfing and going to the parks, and the government said, F you, we're going to send in the army to shut it all down. So it's really going to be interesting to see what comes of this now that they've done that. Absolutely insane. But yes, please still go outside, sit in the sun, take your dog for a walk, jog around your yard, whatever, find a public park. I really don't care what people do, but you need to be getting outside. You need to be getting some kind of exercise. If nothing else, it is a change of scenery outside of your four walls. Very, very important. And, I've been seeing headlines and articles coming out now talking about the role that vitamin D is actually playing in people's immune systems to help try to fight coronavirus. And the only way that your body makes vitamin D is being out in the sun, which is why New Englanders are so deficient. You can take a vitamin D, but it's really not the same. Let's see. So Vince DeBona says, any ideas for dealing with bickering siblings over a parent with dementia while we are all living in the same house? Ooh. Oh, that's a tough one. Dealing with a family member who is experiencing dementia is already difficult enough. And having actually gone through this personally, I find that sometimes things like that and deaths in the family and all of that things can go one of two ways. Either it brings people closer together, or it brings out like the absolute worst in people. I guess it would really depend what you guys are bickering about. I would say number one, being conscious of personal space. If you guys are bickering, once it gets to the point where anyone is yelling at each other or calling names, swearing, any of that, whoever is doing that thing is past the point of being able to hear or process anything that you're saying to them. If it comes to that situation, you guys need to exit the conversation, the conflict, whatever it is. Give each other space, even if it just means going in separate rooms. Different people have different ways of coping with conflict. Some people need to have it dealt with right away, right then. Some people are the ones that need to go and take space and think about it. I would say try to institute a rule that if people are getting to the point where they are like actively fighting, everybody needs to take space. And you guys can decide whether that means taking 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half a day, whatever's going to work for you guys. You need to take space. Another thing that you can do if people cannot seem to have a conversation with each other is write letters. And now this sounds silly. You can do it over text, but text is not ideal because the whole point of writing the letter is that A, you can really sit and think about what it is that you're wanting to say. And B, the person cannot just respond right away with like a snap judgment, a snap defense, whatever. They also have to think about what you're saying and how they want to respond. So text message is not so great for this because someone can fire back instantly and impulsively, and that's not what you want. You would want a letter or an email. Make sure you don't write it in a passive-aggressive way because that's really not helpful. Also, avoid any statements that start with you. The minute you say to someone, you this, you that, they hear that and get defensive. You instead want to use I statements. This, you can Google this. This is like a classic, like #1 conflict resolution skill. I feel blank when you do blank. You're starting the sentence with I. The subject of the sentence is I. Their focus goes to you. It's not about them feeling defensive at that point anymore. It doesn't always work, but it's a pretty good it's a pretty good step in the right direction. Let's see. So I think for your questions, you guys are gonna have to tag me so that I can see it. Let's see. So I'm gonna scroll through and just, I would not say Pornhub is debatable as to whether or not it's an interest. The problem with that is those interests are shut down due to this pandemic, right? So that is one of the big issues. So, David Neal, would writing erotica be a hobby? Absolutely. Yes. That might have been a facetious question, but yes, that can be a hobby. So now I know that some people, you can't do your preferred hobby or interest while we are on lockdown. So maybe it would be a time to, so for example, disc golf, right? So then maybe you practice putting at home, or you watch clinics on YouTube, or practice your form, or do exercises that are going to help you with that. Other things, writing, easy to do at home. Painting, drawing, easy to do at home. Playing music, easy to do at home if you have the interests. I'm naming off all of my hobbies and interests, but I mean, you get the idea. If you are someone who likes exercise classes, a lot of gyms right now are offering live streams of classes or are putting videos up online. And you can substitute, like if you're a weights person, you can order weights online. I would suggest Power Block weights. That's what I use. Or, you can substitute different things around the house that weigh different things. Maybe, you can't go shooting, but, maybe you can pick yourself up like a BB gun and shoot it at a blanket in your basement or something. You have to get a little creative, unfortunately, but, another thing that I've been telling people to do is, one of the biggest things that I've noticed, one of the biggest complaints I've seen, is sort of this total loss of a sense of normalcy, right? And if you are still working and you're working from home, or you have projects that you want to do, there's no sense of like urgency, because it's like, well, the world is shut down for a month, so I have all the time in the world to do it. The problem with that is, there is some evidence and some studies that are coming out now. God, my lighting is like funky today, and that's really unfortunate. Oh, that's helping a little bit. There are some studies and some research coming out now that says things like procrastination and boredom are not so much like a time management thing. They're actually an affect thing. And by affect, we mean mood, sort of. Affect is like a fancy psychological way of saying emotion, really. So procrastination is more of an emotional issue rather than a time management issue. They're saying, really, like, if you are procrastinating, then really you might be a little sad, or you might be a little anxious. And there's a lot of that going on right now, again, because it's like, hey, the world isn't turning, so what do I care? What rush is there to do in these things? So personally, I'm someone, I feel better if I'm being productive, to the point that my friends joke that really the whole point of COVID-19 isn't that the government's messed up in their control of this and China lied. It was really about the fact that I needed to have more work-life balance. But what I've been telling people is, if you had a job where you had to be in at the office every day at 9 a.m., well, get up at 9 a.m. every day. Even if you don't really feel like you have anything to do, set yourself a schedule. Maybe try to get as close to your previous schedule as you possibly can to try to maintain that sense of normalcy, A, and B, when the world does open back up, and if you do have a job waiting for you at the end of this, then you're not going to have as much of a difficult transition period. Maybe pick for yourself one small little goal or one thing that you want to get done. Decide on that the night before. Write it down. And then make it your goal the next day to do whatever that thing was. Whether it's, doing the dishes, getting out and taking a walk, getting some groceries, whatever thing it is, pick one thing, up to 3. But you want at least 1, no more than 3. More than 3 is bad. And just make that your next day's mission. So you're not only putting yourself on a schedule and some sort of timeline, you are giving yourself a reason to get up in the morning and to get ready and do whatever you've got to do. That's really important. Again, this is more difficult in pandemic times, but that is advice that still stands whether we are in a pandemic or not. I think I saw another super chat come through, so let me grab those. I'm trying to also have a third window open. So Robert Chappelle says, only child, divorced, work from home. Oh, I'm gonna have to hit CL, sorry. Only child, divorced, work from home. I was sort of built for this situation. Admittedly, I'm talking to the dog a lot more. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, dogs don't talk back in words, but they definitely sense emotion. They do. There have been some studies that have shown that dogs even feel emotion, and they even feel something very close and akin to love. There also is some evidence. There is a dog out there. You can look him up on Instagram. Google him because I don't remember his name, but there is a dog out there that has a speech therapist owner, and the speech therapist has taken voice commands and sentences and phrases and words and put them, recorded them onto these buttons that you can press, like the Staples Easy button, and basically taught the dog what all of those words mean. And last I looked, the dog was up to 30 different words and phrases where the dog will go and press the button and form a sentence to ask for things. And it's really cool. You could argue that it's just something that the dog has been trained to do for a video, but if you watch the videos, I really don't think that's the case. Dogs actually have some thought process in there and can communicate in their own ways. So I've personally found I am an introvert through and through, but even I'm going a little bit stir crazy here. So I am very glad that at least I got my my virtual D&D going. We actually use the same program and just don't record it, which is pretty cool. Pickle Jars for Hillary says, explain histrionic disorder, please. Oh boy. Okay, well, to best explain it, so my DSM is holding up my laptop at the moment. So let me find some other books to put under it, and we'll read the criteria and go through the criteria, because I think personality disorders are fascinating. So, all right, so we are going to instead prop up my computer on motivational interviewing, couples and treatment, which is ironic because I don't do couples therapy, my cognitive behavioral therapy certificate course, and some crappy episodes or volumes of Psychology Today, which kind of is a little bit of a pop psychology rag, but once in a while they have something good. And I get it for free. So, okay, DSM there. Uh-oh, the cops are outside. They better not be coming to check on me. I'm an essential worker. I'm being legal. Okay. Sorry, there's no smooth way to do this. Okay, there we go. All right, so keep in mind this is the DSM-4 TR. The DSM-5 is all the rage now. They actually almost got rid of personality disorders in the DSM-5, which would be stupid. But personality disorders are fun, I think. They're interesting. I have treated most personality disorders at this point. I've had several antisocials. I've had a lot of borderlines, a couple histrionics, some narcissists, some schizotypals, some schizoids. But those were all mostly when I was in like community mental health and like working with severe populations. I try not to take too many of those people on in private practice because it can be dangerous, at least with the antisocial people. So, histrionic personality disorder. So keep in mind, a personality disorder is not just someone who like has some mood swings or some weird behavior now and then. A personality disorder is a long-standing, like lifelong pattern of behavior and affects, which again, emotional states. And it's basically who that person is as a person through and through. That's really the general criteria of what classifies something as a personality disorder. So someone can be a narcissist and not have narcissistic personality. Okay, so histrionic disorder specifically says a pervasive pattern of excessive emotionality and attention seeking. So someone who's really theatrical, beginning by early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts, as indicated by 5 or more of the following. So I'll read these and I'll explain them as we go. Number 1 is uncomfortable in situations in which he or she is not the center of attention. So someone who needs to be in the limelight all of the time and maybe might go out of their way to get attention to be in the limelight. Interaction with others is often characterized by inappropriate, sexually seductive, or provocative behavior. Perfect example. I had someone once who had histrionic personality disorder, and they were undergoing treatment for breast cancer at the time. And well, you can bet they came into my office after their first treatment and they hiked up their shirt and let their tits fall out to show me where all the radiation was going. And that classifies as provocative behavior. You might also see people who, it's more common in women, women who dress really provocatively or suggestively in inappropriate contexts, like maybe showing up to a funeral in a mini skirt kind of thing. Displays rapidly shifting and shallow expression of emotions. So someone, the emotion they're expressing doesn't feel necessarily genuine or real. It's 1 minute they're crying and it seems kind of like crocodile tears and poor me because I'm not the center of attention. Oh, you're paying attention now? Oh, everything's fabulous kind of thing. Consistently uses physical appearance to draw attention to self, has a style of speech that is excessively impressionistic and lacking in detail. So this one is a little bit hard to describe in layman's terms. Someone who maybe has a story, they're telling a story, and they never really can provide all the details and also never really quite get to the point. But that's just the way that they communicate constantly overall. It's really hard to describe. Shows self-dramatization, theatricality, and exaggerated expression of emotion. So any emotion that they express is big and so real and has to be made into a big deal as if it's a Broadway play kind of thing. And again, remember you need only 5 of these, and there are 8 characteristics. Is suggestible, i.e. is easily influenced by others or circumstances. So someone who's like, it's not even just gullible. Someone who can, you could easily plant ideas in their head. So if you went up to someone and you were like, oh, so and so was talking about you. Oh my God, they're such a terrible. They said such horrible things. Oh, you should probably go and do something about that. Like, oh, I think you should go punch them in the face. And they totally would get pissed off and go punch the person in the face. Again, I'm putting this stuff in layman's terms, but an 8 considers relationships to be more intimate than they actually are. So someone who maybe is only an acquaintance, but they think that you are their absolute best friend and they're going to tell you everything about them. People that I've treated that have had this issue have had like affairs and in the most bizarre ways, and would like flaunt it and just like things of like showing up to their work in like really inappropriate dress and buying cars that they could not afford by any means just to like show off and bring attention to them. And it's it's not the end of the world. I think that people with histrionic personality disorder are a lot easier to have relationships with than your narcissist PD, your borderline PD, your antisocial PD. Certainly, really, it comes down to they are people who really, really want to be loved and don't know how to go about that appropriately. Is probably how I would sum it up. Let's see. Oh, I got some super chats in. Oh, someone sent me a sticker. Thank you, Daniel. Oh, thank you for being you. Roscoe says, I showed up to a funeral in a mini skirt once. Don't judge me. Interesting subject matter. You'll have to tell us about that on Friday. Rose Blight says, as Robin Patty said, drink water, please. Oh no, did I miss Robin telling me to drink water? And thank you, Carport Carl. That's a good name. Let me refresh those. Yep, okay. Robin telling me to drink water. That's weird. It's showing up on this screen, but it didn't show up at the top of the original chat. That's really weird. That's a problem. Okay. Let's see. What other questions do we have in here? Get some sun, okay, Daywalker. I'm not actually as pale as I look in these videos, but Fire Makes Me King says, anything to read on how to quit smoking? So I don't have books that I give out specifically for that. But oh, that's a tough one. Because usually what I do for someone who is working on smoking cessation is like motivational interviewing. And motivational interviewing, I love motivational interviewing. It's really cool. And it was specifically developed actually to help people quit smoking. And then they figured out it can be used and applied to pretty much any behavior someone is trying to get rid of. So motivational interviewing is holding up my laptop right now. But so questions that you would want to ask yourself and try to document. First and foremost, you are smoking because you get something out of it. If you didn't get anything out of it, you wouldn't be smoking. So you have to figure out what you get out of smoking. What is it that you're looking for, the benefit that you get? That's part A. Part B, you want to try to find something that you can substitute it for that gives you that same benefit. So if smoking helps you relax, theoretically, because really it doesn't, because the nicotine addiction actually makes you more stressed out and it becomes a feedback loop, but theoretically, nicotine and your cigarettes make you feel more relaxed. You could switch to vaping, but if you're really looking to quit completely, you would want to find something else that relaxes you. Yoga, exercise. I've actually had some people with a lot of success with mandalas. And you can pick these up. You can... Yep, sorry. Of course, I put it under the laptop. Uh-oh. And I lost my camera feed. Womp womp. Am I gonna plug back in? Oh, it's not gonna plug me back in, is it? There we go. Okay. Technical difficulties. So, yes. So, mandalas. You can find these online. You can print them out. You can buy really cheap Amazon coloring books. So these are more, so actually this one might be a good example. Actually, this is a perfect example. So it sounds silly, right? So, but the mandala is usually a circular pattern. It is very symmetrical. It is very detailed. And here would be another example. This would be a really good one, actually. Like, see how crazy that is? Studies have found that when people sit and color these, because of they don't know if it's the symmetry, the circular patterns, the small detail. Here's another good one. But it actually, while people are sitting and coloring them, it changes their brain waves, which is crazy pants. And it promotes relaxation. It promotes focus and concentration. So it's actually also really good for people that have ADD and ADHD to help them work on developing focus. But yeah, and all those Zen monks do mandalas, right? But they've actually found that it promotes relaxation and changes your brain waves while you're doing it. So I've actually had a lot of people. It sounds hokey, I know, and normally I don't go for this kind of hokey stuff, but I've had a lot of people have success in like coloring mandalas while they are trying to quit smoking. And it eases some of their anxiety and stuff that comes with it. Another thing to keep in mind, you will be moody as F for like the first 3 or 4 days. Once you get over that hump, you'll be good. Let's see. Dry fire practice. Yes, dry fire practice is another option too. Some pistols you cannot do dry fire with. We learned that the hard way with the Ruger LC9 back when we first started shooting. If you dry fire that too much, you will break the firing pin. But there are kits that you can get, little like laser kits and stuff that you can put on different pistols and stuff too, which are pretty cool so that you can, practice a little bit more. Nelson Fisher, thank you for the compliment. Oh yeah, see, someone's saying that they dry fire in the house with a laser. That's good. Oh, someone's saying Sig Earther said that they made cookies. So that's another good one, baking. Also, if there is a skill that you have wanted to learn and never took the time, this is a perfect time where you have all the time in the world. I mean, you can learn pretty much anything from YouTube these days, or, if you do a search for something, even like MIT has free classes and stuff on the internet, and you just have to like download the lectures and the videos. Any projects that you have been putting off for lack of time, well, you have all the time in the world now. I actually mentioned it on Twitter last night that I was like, well, hot damn, I started writing a novel in November of 2014 during NaNoWriMo, and I wrote all like 50 words of Nano at that point, and then I touched it a little bit in a couple Novembers after, and that was it. And I never finished it. And it's like, well, gee, I have all the time in the world now, so I'm going to pop up my manuscript and sit and edit it and try to finish it, because why not? I'm also taking a specific certification class that my patrons know about that I'll be able to announce later someday. TJ Moore asks, do you have autistic patients? As an autistic, I'm thriving in this. How are others doing? I'd like to know so I can reach out to fellow autistics with tips. So actually, I currently do not have any clients with autism right now. I typically don't work with autism unless it's really someone who's really high functioning, because people who are a little lower functioning and they need to be really concrete, I have trouble with that. And so it's outside of my comfort and skill level, really. I have had some clients with Asperger's when it was still called Asperger's, and it really depends on the client. One of my favorites, oh God, he was awesome. He was so awesome. He our sessions were, I would give him a manual to read on cognitive behavioral therapy and cognitive behavioral skills and coping skills. And he would go home and he would like read a chapter and then come into the next session with like notes of all his questions and how to do the specific exercises. And that's what we did. And he thrived in that. It was so great. Other people that I've had that were kind of lower functioning, distraction, whatever thing it is that they're really into, they're going to want to do a lot of that thing while this is going on. So I had someone who was like obsessed with a certain TV show. All right, well, you know what? Start rewatching that show from the beginning. She liked to read. So, okay, go and find some fan fiction about that show, and then you can come in and tell me about the episode. And whenever you're feeling anxious, you put on that TV show and you just like sit and have a snack and like go for it. A lot of the people that I've worked with in the past that were, you know, on the autism spectrum, highly introverted, of course, didn't really have a lot of social connections outside of their family. So not having access to friends and things like that right now probably wouldn't be the end of the world. As you said, you're thriving in this. The biggest thing would be people that had really strong connections to their family. And if they're not living with their family, that could be difficult. But then, you know, make sure you do daily phone calls. Get them up on, I wouldn't recommend Zoom, FaceTime, or Android has a version called Duo, or do like Facebook video calls, something like that. That's what I would suggest to people. Tim Allen says, I live on 10 acres out in the country. If I want to go shooting, I just have to go put a target on the homemade target stand and shoot away live fire. Well, there we go. That's great. Torque1 says, why are people so eager to stop living? Because of the fear of death. Sorry to say, but that is the end point for everyone eventually. Well, fear is probably the number one human motivator. And I think government and media are taking advantage of that. Media, it's hard to tell if they're doing it malevolently, but it's certainly happening. And I think that there is a huge misconception right now about this whole flattening the curve thing. And now this is something that I found I've been able to say to some people and not to others. It really depends on their anxiety levels about this and what specifically is concerning them. We have to remember this whole thing about flattening the curve is not stay inside your house and then the virus will go away and everyone will be fine and no one will get it. No, it's about stretching out the amount of time it takes for the population to get the virus so the hospitals are not overwhelmed. Theoretically, I know that there are going to be some people in the comments that are going to argue about this, but I'm saying like that is the reason why they're saying that we need to do this. Nowhere in that reasoning is stay in your house and you'll never get it and then everything will be fine in 3 months and we'll be able to go back to normal life. No. But that is how people are interpreting it. And so people are thinking that it's like one of those crazy sci-fi, disaster alien movies where if they step outside, they're automatically infected and going to kill their family. That's not how this works. Even with things like, and this is tough for the people with OCD. So say that you went to the grocery store and you bought this tissue box, and now they're feeling they need to disinfect this tissue box when they bring it in the house, or else they'll get the virus. Not really the case. You can leave the tissue box outside on your porch for a couple hours. Yes, there are some studies that say that there have been traces of the virus that have been found on surfaces for X number of hours after the fact, depending on temperature, sunlight, all kinds of things, the actual material. But really, it would take me having the virus. Let me cough on my hand. Let me take my virus-infected hand, put it on this spot on the tissue box, and then you go and buy this tissue box and put your hand on that exact spot on the tissue box while the virus happens to still be alive and whole, and then not wash your hands and smear it all over your face. That's what it would take for you to get a virus from a rando tissue box that you pulled up at the store. You can, people are still going grocery shopping, and, they're concerned about people leaving their houses but not going to the grocery store, which is ridiculous. Or I've seen the pictures of the supermarkets that have the X's for like 6 feet apart, forward and backward, but not side to side. But people are just living in fear, and the media and the government are promulgating that fear because, of course, it leads to their advantage. It gives government more power, and it gives media higher ratings. And so that's what I think that is all about. And it's change, really. The human brain is hardwired to not like change because historically, change could kill you. And so that's part of it, too, that we need to consider. Vlad Teeps says, looking beautiful as always. Thank you for your constant reports. Well, thank you. Let's see. Robin says, my hobby as of late is decluttering my house and straightening up my workshop. See, that's a really good one too. And there's also some studies that show that being in like an orderly and organized space can decrease stress and anxiety. So that's a good one. Hunter Foster says we have a Burning Man in South Carolina due to COVID-19. Not 100% sure what you mean by that. Like the festival? You do want to check on your people that are like really into EDM. I saw this as a meme. It was great. It was like, be sure to check on your friends that like EDM, because now that all of their summer festivals are canceled, they have nothing to base their personality on. Brian Weinhart. Yes, thank you for saying this. This is a good point. He says, is this a great time to try and unplug for a few hours every now and again, turn off the phone, TV, etc.? I would say so, at least in regards to limiting your contact with the news and social media. Because what's happening right now is we still don't have a whole lot of information, but there's a whole lot of cooks in the kitchen trying to tell you the same information or their version of the information. And it's leading to sort of this overwhelming oversaturation for a lot of people. Also, you have to take into account Facebook purposely shows people more negative things in order to get people to click on ads and spend more time on Facebook. That was number 2. Number 3, people's tensions are high. People are getting blocked on social media. Friendships are ending because people are they are tense and over emotional right now and stressed out and attacking each other every which way from Sunday. So if you value your friendships and someone is sort of on the opposite end of the spectrum from you and how you're handling this, then you might want to limit your social media contact with them. Not your contact as in texting and phone conversations and video calls, but social media maybe, because it's just it's a war zone out there on Facebook and Twitter right now. Though interestingly, I've found that Facebook is way worse than Twitter, but also Facebook is where I do all the more personal things and not the Liberty Doll stuff. So, let's see. News now, Riverside Sergeant Rock. My hobby as of late. Oh, okay. Sorry. It's responding to Robin Patty. What are you doing? Clutter is what it is all about. Let me check these because I saw some more super chats come in. I'll drink my water, guys. Sorry. More people to tell me drinking water. Thank you, Colin J. Monge. So Robin Patty asks, what exactly is OCD? I've heard all kinds of explanations, all different, but none from a psychologist. Technically speaking, I'm a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. It's really only a difference of a couple years of schooling. So OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, is not someone who just likes to have things clean. It is not someone who just likes to have things orderly. There are two components for something to technically be considered OCD. You have your obsessions and you have your compulsions. So your obsessions are intrusive thoughts that feel like they are about your out of your control, and it's about something that makes you anxious. So in this capacity, we will use it for, we'll say, germs, because that's kind of relevant right now. So obsessions might be, if I don't wash my hands every time I go outside, I'm going to kill my whole family. But it's not, just a worry. It's an intrusive thought that you can't control. It's tough because the media is actually promoting a lot of this right now. So let's see. Let me think about a past case here's a good one. Public bathrooms are full of disease, and if I use them, then I'll get HIV. That's a good one. So you have these obsessions, you have this fear of like HIV, we'll say, and then it impacts your life because then there's all kinds of things that you don't do so that you can avoid this imagined exposure to HIV. Now, the requirement for these thoughts are that they are irrational and you recognize that they're irrational. Doesn't stop you from acting on them, but you can at least recognize that they are irrational. So those are the obsessions. Other ones might be, I had someone who really, really, like, their family was super, super important to them, and they had a fear of like poisoning their family or doing something bad and like not remembering that they had done it. Obviously, this is irrational. Person could recognize that they were irrational, but once it got in their head and sort of like sat in there and repeated over and over and over, they couldn't get rid of it. It's kind of as if you recorded a message on a voice recorder and just set it on repeat in your head, or you set a certain scene of a movie on repeat in your head. Those are the obsessions. The compulsions are the things that you do to avoid that anxiety. So with the germ person, it would be constant hand washing. But it's not hand washing just like, the government tells me to go wash my hands for 20 seconds. It's washing your hands until they're raw, until your skin cracks and bleeds. It's not being able to get out of the house on time in the morning because you keep going back and washing your hands. For the person who thinks that they might have accidentally caused an accident and don't remember, it's constantly say that you think that you have a fear of hitting someone with your car. It's every time you hear a bump, you have to go back and you have to turn around and go park the car and look and make sure that you didn't hit anyone and there's no body there or there's no blood on the front of your car. And then you go and you drive away and then you're like, oh man, well, what if I missed something? So then you go back and you drive back there again and you get out of your car again and then you look all around again. And it's like you just can't convince yourself. Popular compulsions. I shouldn't say popular. Common compulsions. The hand washing. Counting. Counting syllables in words, counting the number of steps in a staircase, having to do things in sets of 3s or 4s. Usually the number that someone picks has a significance to them in some way. I had someone once who in particular was worried about these 4 certain family members, and then their compulsion ended up being in sets of 4s, which was interesting. The obsession also usually has a triggering event of some sort. In the case of someone worrying about, okay, I need to do, I need to go do my compulsion in sets of 4, or else my family member will die. That OCD episode could have been triggered by a person actually getting sick or passing away. In reality, the two things really have nothing to do with each other, but people with OCD tend to have an overactive amygdala. That's the fear and emotional center of the brain, and it associates the two, well, in a place where there isn't really an association. So it is a pervasive pattern of intrusive thoughts and then efforts to avoid the anxiety or the fictitious event in those thoughts that significantly impacts someone's life and causes distress. Yes, I know that got a little bit on the clinical side, but hopefully that makes sense. Patrick Newton asks if I finally made it to South Carolina. No, I did not. Unfortunately, so I am I'm stuck in Massachusetts, at least until the lockdowns are over. And if there really is this second wave that they're predicting, then it could put a wrench in the plans. Let's see. So we got that one. Stephen Lundgren asks, what do you think about the models the government is using to control our lives? I mean, combat the virus. Well, how do I put this in a way that won't be overtly controversial? I think that social distancing, okay, maybe a good idea. Maybe people should be encouraged to stay home, sure. I don't think that the government needs to be falling just short of declaring martial law to do it. I don't think that police departments should be encouraging people to snitch on their neighbors. There was a great meme. Where did I post it? Instagram. That I thought was really good. Well, it's not so much a meme as like an infographic. I don't want notifications now. Instagram. So I'll pull this up and then I'll share it with you guys. So I thought that this was really nifty. Let's see if I can like make it bigger by doing the zoom. Oh no! There we go. So I really liked this, and unfortunately my social media, my personal Facebook page is going so crazy right now that I feel like people are going to get mad if I post this, but this is what I've been using to work with people a little bit too. Things that I cannot control, so I can let go of these things. If others follow the rules of social distancing, the actions of others, predicting what will happen, other people's motives, the amount of toilet paper at the store, how long this will last, and how others react. All of those things are out of control, out of someone's control, and they need to stop trying to control these things. Government is encouraging people to try to control these things, and they can't, which I think really is contributing to a lot of people's anxiety and making this way, way worse. Because like I said, government is doing things like encouraging people to snitch on others, which is giving the illusion that they can control whether or not others follow the rules of social distancing. The mouse didn't show up where I was trying to point with that. Oh well. And it also gives the illusion of being able to control the actions of others, which are things that you cannot control. The only things that are within our control and that we should be worrying about and focusing on are having a positive attitude as much as possible in these times, how you personally follow the CDC recommendations if you are choosing to follow them, your own social distancing if you are choosing to do it, turning off the news, limiting social media, finding fun things to do at home, and trying to still be nice to people, even if you don't think that you like them. And so, yeah, I think that the government is trying to give false senses of security and illusions of control where there is none. That's what I think. Aaron Miller says, loving the chat, more like these, please. Well, thank you. I toss up the idea here and there of doing these sort of more mental health focused chats where I answer people's questions, and it's probably something I'm going to do more in the future. It's just, right now, no one really ever wants to talk about anything else except for coronavirus. And so that's why we're linking this in with coronavirus, because that's anything. Then really it's interesting because YouTube is almost like throttling anything else too, which is interesting. Let's see. Just got a message today that the Birthday Massacre rescheduled their tour. I'm not surprised. Hunter Foster asks, what do you think of a bill in the House that will put repossession orders on vehicles on hold until COVID-19 calms down? Maxine Waters is sponsoring this bill. Well, so I think that sort of falls into the realm too of like the mortgages. So the Fed, or whoever it is right now, is saying that if this continues until June, if the world is shut down until June, 30% of mortgages are going to default and go into foreclosure, without a doubt. And I think that is correct because we have record unemployment. We already have 10 million unemployment claims, and it's expected to go up to like 20 million, 28 million, something like that. There is, of course, I mentioned the 32% unemployment that they're predicting. People aren't going to be able to pay their bills. Ideally, people would have some nest eggs, some buffer room to be able to continue to pay their bills. That doesn't always happen for one reason or another. As for creating laws that say that you can't evict someone or repossess a house, I don't think the government really has, or repossess a car rather, I don't think that the government really has any business in any of that. Now, companies can choose to allow forbearances or forgiveness plans or payment plans or what have you. And honestly, it is within companies' best interest to create a payment plan or some form of forbearance, because then at least at that point, they're still getting some of the money and some of the value of that object. With houses, I don't think that there are actually going to be a lot of houses that will be repossessed or going into foreclosure based on this. If 30% of mortgages do indeed go into default, the housing bubble is going to be burst, right? And it's going to be similar to what we saw in 2008, except it's going to happen much, much faster. So, say someone bought a house for $400,000. I know that sounds crazy to a lot of you guys. That's pretty typical around here in Massachusetts. $400,000 house. So someone owes, say, they still owe $300,000 on it. Then the market crashes. Now that house is only worth $200,000. So are you going to repossess it and resell it for $200,000? Or are you going to keep that person in there who's defaulted on their mortgage and work out a payment plan so they're still paying the original $300,000? It makes more economic sense to keep these people in their homes and with their possessions so that you are still getting your money in the end, as opposed to having this repossessed car sitting on a lot or this house going to market for less than what's owed on it, if that makes sense. I think that the reason why we were seeing more foreclosures previously was because it was a seller's market and housing prices were going up. So it made more economic sense to foreclose the house and then resell it and get more money, as opposed to wait for it to come out from underwater. Economics is fun. This would be a great time for anyone who wants to learn about economics to look up Henry Hazlitt's Economics in One Lesson. Oh God, this name, I'm going to butcher it. Prusiknot says, I'd say now is a great time to build up your ammo stores by reloading so that you're ready when the range is open again. Right. That's good. Stephen Lundgren says, how much faith do you have in the government's coronavirus models? Well, so that's an interesting question. I haven't looked at the models in the last couple of days, so I don't know what the current models are. However, I know that when this first started, there was a lot of articles out there saying that there was a huge discrepancy between the number of reported confirmed cases and the number of actual cases. And they said in a lot of these articles that what you really want to do to find out the number of people who probably actually have corona or COVID-19 in your area is take the number of reported cases, and on the low end multiply it by 10, on the high end multiply it by 25. So if that is the case, let's pull up Johns Hopkins here. Because remember, too, there's still really poor access to testing. There's still a lot of people out there that are not getting tested even when they're symptomatic. It's still been a very real problem. So let's look at Johns Hopkins here. So U.S., 429,052 confirmed cases, with 23,000 recovered. So theoretically, if we follow those original estimates of how to figure out how many people probably actually had it, so you would want to take your 429,52 times 10, which means in actuality about 4.3 million people have it and are either at home not being tested, are asymptomatic, or have been exposed and recovered. So that would be on the low end. If we take that same number, that 429,000, and we multiply it by 25, which was on the high end of the spectrum, then we have 10.7 million people. So even if we go with the 4 million number, and you look at the 14,000 deaths, 14,695, I mean, the percentage is minute. So really, the problem is we don't have the numbers. Oops. I forgot that this was still on. We don't have the numbers to actually make any actual assessments. Anything right now is just a guess. We don't have all the information. We don't have all the numbers. And at this point, it's probably impossible to get all the numbers. But what they are doing right now out of Stanford, I believe, is they are doing randomized antibody tests. So what they're doing is they're taking a big sample of general people and they're testing them all to see if they have coronavirus antibodies. If they have antibodies, then that means that they have been exposed and either are sick, are asymptomatic, or have recovered. And then once they get those numbers, if it's a big enough sample, it should be able to be generalized to the general population. And that's how most experimental data works, is you have to have a big enough sample size and then you generalize it to the population at large to see the numbers. So once they do that, then we might have a better idea of the real numbers of cases and the real percentages of hospitalizations and deaths and things like that, or some of the complications that are coming out of it. There are some people that are recovering but now have brain damage from encephalitis, or the treatments are giving them kidney failure. I've talked to several people now that have friends, family members that are on ventilators, and the treatments have given them kidney failure, and now they're on dialysis too, and they don't know if that's something that's going to clear up once COVID-19 is cleared up. So I think that we don't really have enough information to really talk about how good or bad the government models are. I do think that when Dr. Fauci gives his estimates of 100,000 to 200,000 deaths, I think that he's purposely probably going on the high end of that and overestimating, because in a situation where you are a government official, you want to err on the side of caution, and you would rather have fewer deaths and say, well, oh, thank God we didn't have as many as we thought, as opposed to lowballing it and it going way over. And that's just playing politics. Q says touch the door handle 17 times or else the power plant will explode. Yes, that would be an example of the power plant exploding would be the obsession, and the touching the door handle 17 times would be the compulsion. You can sometimes have OCD without as many compulsions, but it gets complicated at that point. Yes, Hunter Foster says Howie Mandel is a good example of OCD. Yes, he won't shake hands, he won't touch people. That's a good example. Yeah, so someone is saying that they have OCD, they can't have anyone at their house because my house is a mess, even though it is not, but I can't help think it is, and people will notice it. I haven't had house guests for 15 years. So that's a perfect example. I actually have a really good friend that experiences this. Every time I go to her house, she's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry for the mess. Like, just ignore the mess. And I walk in and the place is spotless. So that's a good example. I'm sorry that you're going through that. Let me refresh this. Check, make sure I'm getting my super chats. Also, my husband is supposed to be getting takeout, so I'm waiting for a text message telling me I need to come home and eat supper. So let's see. Robin Patty, so there's a consequence connected to an action. Like if I don't turn a light on and off 5 times, something bad will happen, right? Yes, that is exactly it. Yes. Robert Chappelle says banks are still sitting on housing inventory in Vegas. That's possible, I'm sure. Dragon's Talon 1001 says looking beautiful as usual, LD. Oh, thank you. I wore this shirt specifically for you guys today because I was like, oh, I'm actually leaving my house. So I guess I actually have to dress like myself today. Hunter Foster now wondering how Howie Mandel is doing. That's a good question. Probably freaking the F out. Nelson Fisher asks if I ever stream on Twitch. I know YouTube is your thing, yet you would do well on Twitch also after your regular work. LOL. Well, I mean, right now, YouTube is slowly becoming my full-time job here because I do not have enough mental health clients to sustain right now, and everything is on virtual, like telehealth visits, and they don't pay as much to boot. So I'm doing the full-time YouTube thing until at least May. Honestly, once May hits, or whenever it hits that we're allowed to go back outside and into the world and businesses are allowed to open, I'm probably not going to take on new clients. Gonna go in a little bit of a different direction that I'll announce later when it's closer. Patrons, don't spoil it. But as far as Twitch goes, I considered it. But I had some creators tell me that it's actually more difficult to stream on Twitch because they moderate political content a lot harder and a lot stricter. So meh. Left Catcher says, I'm sick and quarantined. Oh, that's so terrible. Not only to curb transmission, but to aid my immune system to viral out in hopes that I won't need care altogether or to delay my need for care. Well, hopefully that works for you. I mean, I know that some people are able to sit and wait it out at home, and it's only, like 14 to 20% of people that are being hospitalized. So that might be the New York numbers. New York is a little special case because everyone basically lives on top of each other. But the general advice that I have heard and seen is if it gets to the point where it is difficult to breathe, that is, you go to the hospital. If you're having trouble breathing, you go to the hospital at that point. Doesn't matter about whether you're trying to help your immune system or what. If you have trouble breathing, you go. You have to promise us that, okay? It's not so bad you're hydrating too. Okay, well that's good. Then I guess I didn't need to direct you to the hospital. John J. Peterson says Twitch is for gamers, you are for the world. Thank you. Oh yeah, New York. I do feel for the people in New York. Because, oh God, it's just cities are cesspools for any sort of viral outbreak, cold, flu, natural disaster, anything. Like anything goes wrong in the world, a city is the last place that you want to be. So number one, these people live in the city. So I mean, in that regard, there's a little bit of doom and gloom. But now on top of it, no one is letting them out. So even the people that are healthy, that are trying to escape and maintain their health by not being in New York or trying to go to their vacation homes are being like hunted down by the cops and by the National Guard. I mean, if you haven't seen it, my video about Rhode Island, I mean, that is happening. That is real. I had some people try to accuse me of fear mongering. You can go and scroll down to the bottom of the description and read all the news articles about it. It is legitimate. So Rod Miller says, does that mean, in regards to OCD, does that mean that all sports fans that have to wear a certain uniform socks without washing them during the season to bring their sports team good luck an example of OCD? No, I would say that that's more an example of just superstition. That doesn't really go the full, I mean, I guess it depends. If it gets to the point where it is like detrimental to their life, possibly. Otherwise, I would just say that that's superstition. Let's see. Would Twitch be considered a compulsion? Probably not. Well, I don't know. It depends. It could be an addiction for some people. A troll with a purpose says, no one wants your paws blue states. Ree. I mean, I do believe in the right of free travel. Really, you know, if someone has a property in, say, Rhode Island and they're from New York and they've been paying taxes, then they absolutely have the right to go to their, you know, place in Rhode Island or Connecticut and like hunker down until this is over. I wouldn't want to be in this city. I am so glad that I don't live in Boston anymore. I'm pissed enough that I'm still in Massachusetts, but I'm glad that I'm not in Boston anymore because that would be a nightmare. Oh, absolute nightmare. Robin says, thank you. I was going to give you a hug emoji, but I can't find one. Oh, well, that's okay. Internet hugs. MW says, so if all the liberals in New York City die off, can the state turn red again? I doubt it. That's kind of a weird reference to a furniture store in Lynn, and none of you guys will get that, but that's okay. Wasn't there an Escape from New York movie? I believe there was. Soylent Green is people. There were some people complaining that I put that on my meme when I was like, oh, this is every dystopian novel you've ever read, and then Soylent Green was on there. I did not make the meme. The meme just came from the internets, and that's why it was there. I just thought that it happened to be fitting. Let's see. It's weird. This chat like keeps like freezing almost. So Jerry says, what about isolation, depression? I know there are some starting to suffer from it. Yes, this is a very real thing that's happening right now. Again, because like I'm not someone who typically journals, but like I like to write down important or significant events that I have in my life that I want to remember, right? And I was like, well, gee, this would probably be something to sit down and write about. So I pulled out a journal and I started writing about all the things that had been going on. And I was like, geez, it reads like the setting of a dystopian novel, right? If you had told me 4 months ago that this was going to happen, I mean, I might have thought it possible because, I'm suspicious of the government in like all regards, but I mean, I wouldn't have thought that it would be to this degree. So all of the things that are happening, the media, the news, social media, your friends, your family members, your coworkers, all constantly in this tape that they're repeating over and over and over again, kind of like the OCD thoughts. Oh my God, this virus is awful. We're all going to die. People snitching on each other, people cutting off friendships, people being isolated from their communities, their support systems. People that celebrate Easter not being able to see their family on Easter and uphold family traditions. People passing away and not being able to go to funerals, having to cancel weddings, baby showers. These are depressing times. And even someone who doesn't typically suffer from depression or anxiety or mental health issues are starting to experience these things, because in reality, you can talk about chemical balance imbalances until you're blue in the face. 90% of cases of depression are situational. They are because of the situation and environment you're in, not because of something that's actually wrong in your brain. This is one of those examples of situational depression. And now you add to that typically when people start to feel depressed, one of the main things that they often do is they isolate. They isolate themselves away from their community, their friends, their family, their support system. Now, when you are feeling depressed or anxious, whatever it is that your brain is telling you to do, such as isolate, is usually the exact wrong thing that you want to do. The depression is kind of like those parasites that you see on like nature documentaries that like wiggle themselves into ants' brains and then have the ants go to the tops of trees to get eaten by birds. It's because that parasite can only reproduce in the stomach of a bird, right? And so your depression is like this parasite that's telling you to do the thing that's going to make it stronger. Usually, that is isolation. Now we are in a situation where the thing that your brain is telling you to do to make your depression worse is also the thing that the government is telling you to do. That puts us in a sticky wicket. So, I mean, that would be okay. Well, then make sure you're doing the video calls, the texts, the phone calls, whatever. For a lot of people, that's not enough. For extroverts, especially, they are suffering right now. And I feel for them because I am learning through all of this that I am, in fact, a little bit of an extroverted introvert. I'm having a tough time. You just gotta try to maintain the connections that you do still have in the best way that you can and wait this out, really. Yeah, Q, perfect example. He says, my depression tells me to eat lots of bad food and I'm diabetic. Exactly. But, there is, you hear about like the gut brain connection. The foods that we put into our bodies can absolutely influence our brain chemistry and our mood and our body's functioning and our immune system and all of that. And of course, if you're in a bad mood, if you're not sleeping enough or you're sleeping too much and you're feeling really tired, your body is going to crave foods that are high in sugars and carbohydrates and fats. And those are all things that in more than moderate amounts are also kind of bad for you, especially if you have diabetes. So, and they are all things that can put you in a negative affect state or a negative mood. The insulin spikes can wreak havoc on your mental health. So again, that is a situation of the depression telling you the exact wrong things to do. Stephen Lundgren says, how accurate is Myers-Briggs? In college, I was even on introvert extrovert and the rest was STJ. I find it personally pretty accurate. I believe I'm also an ISTJ. What's interesting is there was one test that I took online and it was not accurate, but then there was another one that I took another version and it was. So my personality type is the logistician, which is, yes, ISTJ. And it was pretty accurate for me, actually. My exact results, I used to have screenshotted and I don't anymore, but I was mostly introverted with a little tiny bit of extroverted. And I believe I was the A, the assertive type. So ISTJA. INTPs, ENTPs. What is Tiger King? Stephen Vicanti, where have you been? It's only the most ridiculous, insane, stupid, real life soap opera you've ever seen. Let me grab these super chats. John J. Peterson III says, wait, does Yahoo, I think you mean YouTube, get more than 70%? YouTube takes 30. So YouTube takes 30% of all super chats. As far as ad revenue, I've heard that they take 50. I don't really know, but they take 30% of super chats. I've been considering YouTube channel memberships. I don't know, it's something I've been tossing here and there. I don't really know what I would give you guys for it. I don't know how much they take of that. Pika Warps says, I was very, very sick back in early February and breathing was difficult for a full month. Was sick for a month and a half, 25-year-old male. Interesting. So, I mean, that could have been COVID. That could have been walking pneumonia, because that'll do that too. And in fact, COVID gives you pneumonia. So, I mean, arguably similar. I know that once, like, I had a really bad cold and I had sort of like some shallow breathing, and I went to the doctors and they were like, oh yeah, it's walking pneumonia. And they were like, oh, well, we're pretty sure, but we have to do like an x-ray to be sure. And then they never called back and never gave me the x-ray and just gave me a steroid inhaler. So whatever. I will take a few more of these because it's 9 o'clock now, and I told husband I'd probably be home around 8:30 to eat food, but I told him to text me if he got it before I was home. So we'll take a few more, and then and then we'll wrap it up. I saw there was some more super chats here. Where did they go? That's why I need to have this other window open. I keep just refreshing the actual like super chat log. Okay, I guess there wasn't. I guess I did get them all. Okay. Oh, interesting. Pika Warp says the x-ray pneumonia was negative. Did you get tested for COVID then? Because I mean, then that otherwise sounds like that sounds like COVID. Tim Helen says, I'm an introvert that thinks that the world is getting too loud as I have gotten older. I feel that, man. I grew up in a city, and like the older I get, I hate traffic. I hate large groups of people. I just, I can't do it. Alexi Carrion says ENTP here, quarantined and with a 30-day ban on Facebook. Oh no. It's basically my personal definition of hell. Thank goodness for these live streams. Well, I'm glad. I'm glad that you are finding this helpful. I have a friend that's an extrovert, and he's just been like live streaming, playing video games like every time that he's home to try to get some sort of like interaction with people. Yeah, man, I do feel for the extroverts. Pika Warp says COVID wasn't known in the USA till March, so they didn't test me. Interesting. Well, then I would say, I would say that was probably it. I saw some article today. Can't remember what the source was, but they were thinking that from some of the preliminary results with some of these antibody tests, that it might have been in the West Coast since the fall. That's one theory or one estimate right now. I mean, certainly, like, it started in China in what, November, December. I think it's perfectly plausible that it ended up over here from people in China long before March, right? And I know that there were other people that were really, really sick in late January, early February that had a lot of the symptoms and tested negative for flu, negative for pneumonia. So let's see. Good night, Rose Blight. If you end up watching this later, sorry if you left already. Someone saying they're INTJ. PayPal, no problem. So the only thing about PayPal is PayPal, I had to have a business account for PayPal so that I could accept payments from merch. So because I'm a business account, it automatically selects when people are donating that it's for a business. So then it automatically takes out a fee. If it's just a donation that you're doing, then you can actually click friends and family and it won't take out the fee. Otherwise, if you don't, then PayPal does take out a 3% fee. Or like 3% and 30 cents or something like that. And then it sends me an invoice and tells me that I need to mail you something. And I'm like, but there's no product to mail. So that is something to keep in mind, I guess. Okay. Jack Bias says tips on introducing a gun-shy significant other to firearms. Love the channel. Keep the videos coming. Take her out shooting and start with like a 22 because they don't really make a lot of noise. That's what I would say. Do I accept payments from mercs? Like mercenaries? No? And Mr. Jones says, thanks, off to go visit Matt and Blonde. See you Friday. Oh, right. Yeah, 9 o'clock. So that's when they usually start their stream, right? So, for PayPal, call it a consulting fee. Right. 22 isn't loud and doesn't kick. Right. So that's the consensus with the 22. So, it's 9 o'clock. I said I was going to be home like 45 minutes or half an hour ago. I don't know if that means food's home or not, but I will be doing the regular live stream on Friday. We will have a guest, I believe. He is home now, so we should be able to have him on. He made a comment earlier, and that is a friend of mine, Roscoe Van Dam. He has a YouTube channel as well, and it's really funny. I enjoy it. And I don't know. We're just going to talk crap about the news, I guess. We'll see. We'll see how. I've never talked to him like in person or on a video call, so we'll see how it goes. But I think it'll be fun. I enjoy his viewpoints and his videos. So, I'm pretty sure I got all of the super chats. I will check one last time here. Yes. All right, we got them all. So hopefully you guys found that helpful. Hopefully, you guys are able to use some of the tips. Maybe you found it informational. If nothing else, I guess it gave you guys someone to sort of talk to in the chat and me for like almost an hour and a half. I figured this was going to be an hour. I always underestimate how interested people are in these, I guess. So that's it for tonight. We will have the regular Friday live stream from 7 to 8:30 because D&D is going to promptly start around 8:30. And I will see you guys then. Yeah, maybe I'll do some more of these in the future. So everyone, have a good night. I am going to go home and eat some pork pineapple fried rice, and it is going to be delicious. All right, guys, good night, and I will catch you on Friday.